Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Astral Tourist. Today's episode is about how I co-mingled the Harner Shamanic Method with Astral Projection to visit the upper world and connect with my guides. For those who aren't familiar, the Harner Method was developed by anthropologist Michael Harner. It's one form of core shamanism. It uses drumming, visualization, and intentional, conscious spiritual journeys to other realms called the lower, middle, and upper worlds to seek guidance, healing, or insights. I adapted it for my own practice and combined it with astral projection, hoping to meet some of my guides and get some insights about the future. That's always tricky trying to ask guides about the future, though. So while I did not listen to drumming as I fell asleep, I did make the intention to journey to the upper worlds and get insights from my guides. So that was my intention, to journey to the upper worlds and get insights from my guides. I think I would have had more success than I did if I had made a clearer intention. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and share what happened. So after falling asleep, I had a dream. It felt like a dream in this case, of being back in college, but it wasn't my actual college. This was a whole different place. And I had a male roommate who was sleeping during the day. He had said something to me, I thought. And so I just told him I'll try to be quiet and considerate. But he started to get upset just for my even being there in the room, which was partly mine because I had a bunch of my stuff way over on the other side of it. And so I guess he was just upset at me existing at all or just being there. And things kind of got icky fast. And I told him I'd find another place rather than deal with his attitude. Because I'd tried to explain a couple of times to him already that I'd try to be really quiet, but I have to live too, and I might be in and out a couple times really quietly. And he was just got such a bad attitude. I didn't like it. And so I told him I was going to find another place. And he told me to get out. And I told him to shut up, and I'd get out when I was good and ready. So that did not go well. And that really frustrated me. And I thought this is not a good start to my intention there when I was falling asleep. Before leaving, though, I went through some of my things in the room, deciding what to take with me. Particularly, I was focused on my earrings. They were the loopy types that I don't even wear anymore because they tend to fall out or get caught in my hair. So this was a small, mundane thing that reminded me, even in altered states, like a lucid dream, our personal history and instincts show up. Like I said, I was so frustrated, but I wasn't about to give up just yet. Things faded out. I'm not sure if I used the wake back to bed method or not. I do remember getting up last night to use the bathroom, so this may or may not be a wake back to bed method, but I know I fell asleep again. Whether I woke up briefly or actually got up or things just faded out. But when I became lucid again, I found myself flying through a long golden metallic tunnel. It felt very 5D. It was brilliant. And I thought, this is way more like it. And I wondered if it would lead me to the upper world with the guides like I'd requested. And so I kept making that request again and again while I was flying through the tunnel, because it felt like I was in there like maybe a good 5 to 10 minutes, let's say 7. So eventually I arrived at the end, which just made a snap of a bright white light, kind of. I want to say there was a snap, but I didn't hear it. It just kind of felt like a snap at the end, like a rubber band that was stretched and then snap. And there was a whole different college campus this time, huge one. Think like those expansive malls I've talked about. Well, this is a super expansive campus with different buildings, some looking futuristic, some not. and everything was lit up with this bright afternoon 5D light. I don't know how else to describe it. It's like a bright afternoon, but you can feel the difference in the vibration in the energy. And everything was surrounded by woods. And there was this huge lake also around the campus and the woods and everything. So this one felt familiar. And I knew I had been there a few times in the past, but not many times. This is not like a recurring common location, but I remembered it. And I remembered like the parts about the layout and the woods. So I had come out somewhere near that lake. I was exploring the woods, and I came across loads of eagles by the lake. Like they were kind of like on the outskirts of the woods on a like small beachy area. And then there's the lake. And, I wasn't sure what to do. Like I knew I had seen them before in my other visits, but I couldn't quite remember how to interact. So I was trying to remember, like, should I hold out my arm so one can land on me and give me a message? Or should I try flying with them and they'll show me something? And then all of a sudden, this one huge eagle flew at me at super speed, like straight on, like it was going to come right into me. So I just instinctively did a tricky curve, turn, and partial dissolution. Remember, I go around kind of misty, so I can dissolve my particles in the astral on cue, and a spin to avoid this eagle. And then I thought maybe I was supposed to let him come into me, but I was already moving into a spin that I remembered. And I was like, oh, I know what to do. So that was all like a spiritual muscle memory. And then I kept spinning. I had already executed the proper turns to turn it into a spin. And so I kept spinning because it had all come right back to me how to do that. And this is how to communicate in this particular location with them, at least one way. So hundreds of them began circling me in a kind of aerial vortex, rising higher and higher. And as I lifted off the ground, I raised my arms in particular directions while spinning, just gently and lifting. And they were gently flying and lifting and spinning and looked like they were really happy too. And when it was over, they just kind of flew off. And a few of the bystanders were amazed. I didn't actually see them, but they were telepathing at me, wondering how I knew to do that, or what did I just do? And I explained it was like a reflex I'd learned in previous visits. Okay, so that was really fun, and I think the highlight of the whole thing. If you just want to stop right there, it's fine. But yeah, there's more coming here. So after that, I continued exploring the campus and ended up in some office back rooms. The guides there were busy and overwhelmed, but I felt like I needed help too. So this one lady with glowing golden eyes, she looked mostly human, but she had these like alien glowing golden eyes that were like big cat eyes. So I don't know if she was like one of those feline aliens you hear about or what, but she was really cool looking. And she told me she's a local guide and asked if I needed assistance. And I could tell that she was hoping I'd say no, like I could feel her mind was so busy with all these other things. So I told her it was just about regular Earth problems, and I mentioned one, which I won't mention here because it's a personal question I wanted to ask about. And she looked at me oddly and said she specialized as a nurse, so that wasn't really her specialty anyway. And then she moved on to help others that she would be more able to help. So frustrating, yes, but also revealing, and that's not the first time I've had this happen. Not every guide is equipped for every question. And so again, if maybe I had made my intention more clear in the beginning of all of this, I might have had a different result or a more direct result, but I did what I did and this is what happened. So this is just an example of something that can happen, and that's fine. It is not uncommon to have to ask around. With everyone else in those rooms looking so busy with problems like way worse than my own, I decided I wanted to end the experience, especially since I'd already encountered the eagles, but I didn't want to wake up yet. So I remembered how I had shifted like into a higher dimensional area from that one in the past without waking up. So in this area, the trick is to go out to a public spot by the large lake out there and rise high into the air. So I knew that to skip the standard tour, which means the entire experience of the campus, and to like ascend up higher into a different version of it, I had to perform a specific sequence. And it was all just coming back to me from before. So I did this maneuver where I flew under the stone bridge, executing 2 very tricky curving twists to maintain my momentum before soaring back up in the air. And I had to nail those 2 particular twists perfectly, because if you miss the second one, you lose your momentum and end up making a very undignified splash in that lake. So everyone cheered that was out there to see it, and one guide even asked how I'd reached the end of the quote-unquote full experience so fast. So I telepathed back about how I'd been there before and did not need to repeat the basics. Those 2 maneuvers were my way of, showing my experience and skipping the level and signaling that I was ready to move upwards and onwards. And I did add in that I'd really enjoyed the eagles, though, as I did not want to seem ungrateful. So I was just trying to move on up. I couldn't really remember if there was more to do, and I was about to just start flying and make the intention to go up a dimensional level and try that out. Sometimes that can work. So you can always try that too. But before I could even do that, I was just about to do that when I met another man who at first just seemed like a regular guy who wanted to chat. I was like, oh, he's a nice guy. And we chatted a bit about the campus overall and the eagles. And he revealed eventually that he was also a guide. I'm like, that was tricky, acting like a regular guy. But he wasn't that tricky because he told me before too long. So I'm not sure what that was all about. Maybe just to get me to stay a few extra minutes and find out if he could help or something. So we ended up going to a common room with a big couch looking out at the lake and the bridge, the stone bridge. And I asked if he could tell me anything about my future. And he reminded me that they weren't allowed to. And I've asked this question before, and I've covered this before. That's a great way to unstabilize the experience. So don't do what I did there, but sometimes I just can't help but ask. Sometimes the guides will get upset, or you'll just wake up and things like that. So don't do what I did there. I just still do it sometimes anyway. So that's on me. And I knew the answer was going to be that. So I was like, yes, I know that, but I had to ask, just in case. So remember, I've covered that already before. And the way to really ask the question is to ask, what can you tell me? So that's what I asked him next. I said, what can you tell me then? And he whispered that there would be a barbecue at the campus in 2 days, and encouraged me to either stay for it or return. So I told him I wasn't sure if I could, as I've only ever made it to that particular dimension and campus a few times in my whole lifetime. So I asked if he could tell me anything else at all about anything. I kept it really broad and general. So, he said, you'll find a new passion in a few days. So I wasn't sure if that meant like a hobby, a book, an idea for a new song, or something else. So then I asked about longer-term relationships. I was being kind of tricky there, trying to find out about the future again. And at least he didn't get upset at me for trying, but he did say I would find new interests, whatever that means. Now, I know these are really general answers on the surface of things. So then he shifted forms, revealing dark wavy hair and a tattoo of dark feathers all across his chest. I didn't get a really good look at them because it was kind of blurry. Everything was clear before that, and that when he did that shift, everything got a little bit blurry. But they were possibly eagle feathers, so I'm thinking, wow, another eagle reference. And he gave me a reassuring hug. Even though I didn't get all the answers I wanted, this gesture was comforting and definitely reinforced the eagle motif, connecting back to that earlier instinctive experience about that astral and muscle memory and movement and the motion of the dynamics with that, plus what I'd done at the bridge. So here are the takeaways. The big lesson for me and anyone exploring these realms is that guidance is often symbolic, experiential, and confidence building. Unfortunately, we do not always get the answers we want. The eagles were reminding me to trust my instincts. That was really clear. And the golden-eyed nurse simply wasn't the right guide for my personal question. The shape-shifting guide with the eagle feather tattooed chest wasn't telling me my future directly, but he reassured me and reinforced the patterns I should pay attention to. So this is where I'm picking it apart and showing you how to pick your experiences apart a bit to see where the real messages lie. So sometimes, again, the guidance isn't about literal answers. It's about activating what you already have. Intuition, instincts, and the ability to recognize patterns and signs. So in this case, the threads woven through this experience are the eagles, the spinning, the shape-shifting, the motion dynamics, and the bridge. And even the number 2 kept appearing, not just in the 2 days until the barbecue, but in the very mechanics of my movements. I had to use 2 particular twists to clear the bridge, and a specific 2-part maneuver to enter the spin I used to generate the vortex with the eagles. So it's also a reminder that alignment requires precision and trusting the muscle memory of the soul and ourselves. It's also a good reminder that when we want particular outcomes, we have to line it up in the physical and in the astral. We have to make sure that the conditions are right and not just expect, like miracles out of nowhere. We need to create the patterns that can generate those results. So if a new passion or barbecue does arise as predicted, that could be pretty interesting. I know that they're pretty general symbols, but I'll take them. The best part for me was definitely spinning with those eagles and the movement, and I could feel the vibration of the particles in the air and their movements even. And so that was just incredible for me. I'm really grateful for the experience just for that, even though I was frustrated in other ways. I wouldn't give it up because those eagles were incredible. And now that it's spring, I will also take it as a sign to get outside, walking and moving around more. I've been kind of cooped up in the winter here because I tend to fall easily on ice and in the snow and stuff, but that's melted now. So I'm going to take that as some inspiration to get moving at least a little bit more. Thanks for joining me today. Have you ever had a guide who seemed unhelpful at first, but left you with an important lesson? Share your story, please, in the comments. And until next time, trust your instincts and happy astral travels.